Things have been a little quiet on the CUDA. We got new rear frame rails, rear cross member, complete new floor pans in from firewall all the way back to tail panel. And it's just kind of resting while I figure out a drivetrain for it and a few other things. But in the meantime, I've got another project to introduce to you. It's a car that I actually bought about 3 years ago, and it was just too cool of a car, and I was neck deep in about 4 other projects. I still am, but we're gonna make time for this car right now because we've had some developments that kind of pushed it to the forefront. The new project that's been bumped to the front of the line is none other than a black 1970 Charger RT. Now, I got the drivetrain with it, but it was completely disassembled, blown apart. It had a spun cam bearing, and it wasn't the original numbers matching block anyway. The transmission was not the original transmission. The differential, the 8 3/4, was completely disassembled. Looked like they were gonna upgrade everything. And the previous owner pretty much kind of just got stalled, lost interest. It's just been sitting in a garage in the St. Louis area for about the last 7 or 8 years. I don't know much about the history before that, so this is kind of a blank slate for me. It's a car that is good from far, but far from good in terms of the paint quality. As my dad would say, it looks good from a galloping horse, and it really does look pretty good till you get up close to it and you realize the clear coat, especially on the hood and on the roof, is, I don't know what happened, but it split. Perhaps some old activator was used when they sprayed the clear coat on this car. It's a perfect candidate for a driver, and that's exactly what it's gonna be. There's no fender tag with this car, but it's pretty obvious to figure out this thing was a non-air conditioned car. It had manual brakes on it, manual steering. This thing was just, put a 440 in it and go have some fun. Whoever ordered this thing was not looking to spend any extra money on this thing at all. Pretty straight, looks decent, and it's absolutely filthy. So I apologize. It's been sitting in here for quite a while. At first glance, everything looks like it's there. That grill is broken up here at the corner, and it's got a non-1970, I think it's a 69 door on the driver's side. I've got another grill from another car I used to own. In the last, probably 8 months, I actually had the engine bay repainted. It's nothing terribly fancy or expensive, but again, it looks way better than what was in here because the previous owner or whoever had installed the engine in this car spray painted this engine bay while the engine was in the car. And the previous color was yellow. So all the hard to reach areas like those frame rails had a lot of yellow shining through. It just looked terrible. So we did an engine respray on this in preparation, knowing that we'd be working towards getting it running here this summer of 2025. But again, things got bumped up. For reference, this is what the engine bay looked like when I got it. These wheels were not on it when I got it, but there are some 17s. I'm still kind of warming up to them. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to stick with them or not, but this car in general, really pretty straight. Got some scrapes, some bruises, things like that, but man, this is a perfect candidate to just throw a drivetrain in and go have some fun. Again, that 8 3/4 is completely blown apart. So I've had a 742 cased differential being rebuilt. You end up using that, but I've picked up some headers, some exhaust, had some front suspension rebuilt. The passenger side fender also pretty straight. Few scratches and nicks and whatnot. Paint that's done, again, driver quality. I don't know if you'll be able to see this up on the roof, but here's an example of the clear coat where it split. And I'm sure that it just, new and fresh products were not used to mix the paint when that was done. But that's okay, I don't care. If anything, I might do a satin black top on it just to kind of simulate, break up the black a little bit, provide a little contrast. Haven't decided there yet. The rear window corners, pretty decent. I'm sure that they've got some filler in them. That's just my guess. I don't know that for sure. I had some hood hinges rebuilt and repainted as well. And the dash is, I took it apart. It's had some cobbled together instrument gauge set up. So I'll put a factory cluster back in there. You can see the frame of part of what was in there, but it just had gauges everywhere. Now, the interesting thing about this car is it was yellow before it was black, and before that it was red. I'll pull up some carpet here in a little bit and show you just how solid this thing is, but it is incredible. In fact, I can just show you right now in this back seat. I mean, there's the original red, and it's, man, just super solid. So, no floor pans needed in this one, which is a real difference for me. Seems like I'm always doing floor pans in these cars. Even down low, the rockers are in really solid shape. There is a little bit of rust here at the seam where the quarter panel meets the rocker, but I don't care. It's gonna get run like it is. But the underside of this thing is really, really dry, really solid. Even the upholstery is really very nice, you know, good driver quality stuff that I'm really not gonna mess around with that much. Door panels also better than most that I see. The dash pad, really quite good. It must have been replaced, I'm guessing. Rear seat, I mean, they always fare better than the front seats. The front seats look that good. The rear seats are generally just fine. But I'm a bit of a hoarder. I've got another set of 70 buckets and rear seats, so I'll compare the two. Whichever ones are a little nicer, those are the ones I'll throw in there. And the other set of seats is gonna go in a 70 Coronet Super B that hopefully I'll start on this next year. So I've been working on a 440 off and on for the last several months, and I was gonna use a 727 automatic, put it back in there, but a deal came along on a drivetrain that I couldn't pass up. We're on a short little trip down to Valley Center, Kansas. It's only about 15 miles from my house, and we're headed to go pick up a 440 HP engine. This 440 HP popped up. I made a deal for it. I don't know the details on the internals. I do know that it has aluminum heads, Edelbrock, and it makes about 500 horsepower per the dyno. So I'm excited to just have something that's proven, that I heard run and drive, that's ready to drop in. The other cool thing about it is it comes mated to an 833 4-speed. It's an 18 spline. It's coming out of a 1970 Dodge Challenger. The owner of the Challenger wants to go fuel injected and a 5-speed. So I'm picking up engine and transmission mated together. It's got a hydraulic throwout. So it seems like, man, this could be a really great combo for this Dodge Charger. The only bad thing is, though, and it's not a bad thing, I just have to cut a hole for the shifter and put in a shifter hump. And hopefully we're gonna have this thing in the Charger in the next 2 weeks, whenever I can find the time, when I'm not at work or at kids' volleyball games or whatever else is going on. Here's the 440 engine that I bought, still sitting in its original home, a 1970 Dodge Challenger. Well, here it is. This is the 440 HP engine we picked up, and it's got a few nice little goodies on it. First of all, the aluminum heads. They're Edelbrock Performers. Second of all, 6-pack setup. It's on an Edelbrock 6-pack intake manifold. I got all the accessories with it, and huge bonus, it's got an 18 spline 4-speed. Obviously, I'll have to change out the E-body shifter and linkage and put them in the 4-speed B-body configuration, but not bad. Also, there's the hydraulic lines. So this will be something that should be a really fun driver. It's kind of getting out of control in my garage. I got a 6.4, a 289, 5.0, a red-eye engine, another 6.4 over there. It's pretty much out of control in this garage. This 1970 Charger hasn't moved from this spot in the shop for the last couple of years, so I had to air up the tires, clear stuff from around it and underneath it, move cars out of the shop, and then try to maneuver it between a couple of my other cars. I'm pretty much just landlocked. I wish I would have listened to my own thoughts and built this shop bigger when I built it 7 or 8 years ago. I really just needed to move it so I could open the doors freely and get access to the carpet and seats so I could get them out without damaging anything else. This Charger also has a really pretty decent back side. You can tell that it really hasn't been in any wrecks before. That bumper's pretty straight. This is kind of a mistake that was made, was filling in the gap between that corner piece and the rear valance. So, you know, some fillers in that rear valance, but that's not all that uncommon anymore. Taillight panel and taillights really are in pretty good shape. So that's kind of good news. The trunk floor, I'm guessing, has been redone at some point. There's a little bit of rust in the troughs of that floor pan, but really not bad. This thing had a battery box in the trunk, which we'll probably end up reusing. The rear frame rails on this car are really pretty good. You can see someone must have pulled this car out of a ditch a couple times by hooking into those holes, but where the rear frame rails and the leaf spring mount tie in, they're really, really solid. I'm happy to see that. The driver's side rear frame rail is almost identical with the same elongated holes there where someone hooked on to either pull it out of a ditch or tow it on a trailer. But again, I'm super happy about that left rear frame rail and the leaf spring mount. I just pulled the front seats out and some of the panels to get some access to this. There's a little bit of scale here, but for an original floor pan car, that is about as good as it gets. I took a wire wheel and really just knocked some of the scale off. You can see there is one hole there and some pitting, but this is not something I'm gonna mess with. That is good enough. I'm just gonna run it like that. I actually had 2 4-speed humps. One is an AMD aftermarket piece and one is a factory 4-speed hump that was removed by a previous owner. And as you can imagine, trying to remove that thing without bending it and messing it up a bit is pretty hard to do. So either one would be fine to use. However, the AMD one fits a little better than the original one that was removed. But all I did was set it in place. It's kind of self-locating really, because it really just lands where it lands. And I etched it, marked it all the way around, and taped it off, leaving a little bit of a flange to weld to. So we're gonna get ready with the cutoff wheel and go to town. We're going to make some quick progress on this car. This one will not drag out, I promise. In the next episode, we're gonna look at the rear end, suspension, brakes, fuel system, all the normal stuff that you really should look at before you throw a car on the road after it's been sitting for quite a while. Thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please hit like, subscribe, and tune in for the next episode coming soon.